Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to Business Continuity for Higher Learning Commission reviewers for the spring of 2020. This is Jamie Stanessa. I'm the Associate Vice President for Member Education and Peer Corps Service. And I'm joined today by Jeff Rosen, Vice President for Accreditation Relations and Director of the Open Pathway, and Karen Solomon, Vice President for Accreditation Relations and Director of the Standard Pathway. Our manager in the Peer Corps Service Department is running our technology, Denise Clark. And we're also joined today by Pamela Monaco, who is the Dean of Instruction, the City Colleges of Chicago, Wilbur Wright campus, as well as Michael Westerfield, who's recently retired Vice President for Institutional Effectiveness at William Woods University. Pam and Mike were both out doing a virtual review this week, and at the end of our presentation, they're going to give us a little bit of feedback about how that went and provide some tips. In this webinar, we're going to outline the next steps that HLC is taking to ensure the continuity of our accreditation operations amid this international health crisis and under the guidance from its Board of Trustees and the U.S. Department of Education. With this rapidly evolving health situation due to the spread of the novel coronavirus and recent operational changes on many institutional campuses, HLC has decided to conduct forthcoming comprehensive and selected focus visits as virtual evaluations. We want to start by saying that HLC understands the severity of the situation on most campuses. We're here to support our members through this increasingly uncertain and chaotic time. And we wish all of you and your families and friends and colleagues good health and safety in this particularly difficult moment. Several environmental and accreditation factors played into this decision. First and foremost was the safety and well-being of our reviewers and staff, faculty, and students on our member institution campuses. We also understand the pressure on every campus in every country right now and across the country here in the United States in the wake of the virus, with closed dorms, increased online learning, canceled events, and closed work offices. Secondly, several accreditation factors also played into our decision to shift some of our peer review processes temporarily. Reaffirmation visits generally are required within 10 years. Rescheduling of these reviews may prove problematic. Critical to maintaining contact, we think, during this time, and provide support to our institutions in the midst of this crisis management. And finally, focus visits ensure continued quality assurance and should not be postponed in general. So our goals for doing this are to avoid unnecessary travel and unessential travel and ensure recommended social distancing, to ensure consistency and integrity in the reviews using the assurance system and virtual tools, implement pathways practices, evaluate institutions through the criteria for accreditation, maintain reaffirmation of criteria of the accreditation cycle, and keep peer review teams intact. On March 17th, this week, the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Post-Secondary Education issued guidance documents to accrediting agencies, which provides for additional flexibility as a unique and temporary departure from the department's accreditation agency requirements. The full document is available on the Office of Post-Secondary Education's website, which is there. I will also say that this PowerPoint presentation is loaded as a handout, a PDF handout in this, and if you can't find it, Denise will circulate it at the end of the call. So what did this guidance lay out? This temporary flexibility includes the possibility for virtual evaluations, as well as potential extensions of the reaffirmation cycle. Virtual evaluations, as with regular on-site visits, must employ an engaged, interactive format, which provides for live dialogue between the team and the institution. HLC is required to perform a follow-up, in-person visit to campus when travel is again possible, and we'll talk a little bit further about this later in the session. HLC may choose to limit virtual visits to institutions that are in good standing or to reaffirmation visits. HLC has already been in touch with many institutions and reviewers about the format for their upcoming reviews, and others will receive official communication from us in the coming week. The decision-making process remains in place, as the IEC and the board may take action based on findings of the virtual evaluation. Further, HLC's decision-making bodies may take additional action after the on-site follow-up visit if circumstances warrant such. Finally, the guidance from the department provides for other flexibilities, including extensions for good cause to typical reaffirmation cycles, to sanctions, and to show cause orders. So here's the general approach that we're taking for HLC reviewers in the spring of 2020. Many of our virtual evaluations will take place starting on March 17th, and a couple took place this week. Given this flexibility, institutions will generally undertake their comprehensive evaluations for all pathways visits, comprehensive visits, and many focus visits scheduled through the spring of 2020 in a virtual format. Focus visit evaluations will be determined by HLC on an individual basis. If you are scheduled for one of those visits, please consult with the Vice President for Accreditation Relations, the liaison, for that particular assignment. And at this time, we anticipate that assurance reviews will take place as scheduled during the summer of 2020. Because location visits require students to be present on campus, HLC will reschedule these events. Substantive change visits will be handled on a case-by-case basis. If you're assigned for one of these activities, please reach out to HLC for guidance at changerequests@hlcommission.org. So for our general approach, the balance of this webinar will cover HLC's guidance and expectations regarding virtual comprehensive evaluations and virtual focus visits occurring this spring. Instead of traveling to campus, teams will conduct comprehensive evaluations virtually. All team chairs have been assigned an intercall conference line by HLC. Teams will also have available to them the institution's virtual technology, which may include Zoom, Adobe Connect, MS Teams, GoToWebinar, or other software for virtual collaboration. Teams should use the institution's technology or software products whenever possible for reasons of privacy and software licensing. Team members, for similar reasons, should not use their own institution's software products. Additionally, HLC does not have the capacity to provide tech support for any virtual products beyond the intercall conference line, so teams must rely on the institution's software and support services in executing the reviews. We do have a couple of extra conference lines that we're trying to spread around, so if your team needs an extra conference line, you can contact Angela Sales and inquire about that, but we can't promise it for every single team. We just have a limited number of numbers. And Angela's email is at the tail end of this presentation. So Karen, do you want to pick it up with institutional contact?
Absolutely. So let's start to talk about how you're going to prepare for the evaluation and the steps you're going to take moving forward. So as typical, you will contact the institution's ALO to set the schedule, the agenda, and to determine whether technology is going to be available for conducting the evaluation. Reminder again that this is when the institution's technology is available. Otherwise, you can use the conference line because special technology is not required, and we do not want you using your institution's technology for these evaluations. The team chair will communicate the technical possibilities with the rest of the team members, and then proceed planning the agenda. And we'll talk about the agenda later on in this presentation. And if you had state or system representatives scheduled to be involved in this evaluation, they should be included in the virtual evaluation also. We'll move on, Jamie. I think you've all seen this slide over and over again. There's just a couple little differences on here. The visit to the campus. Visit to the campus is time and date set into the future. And it will be a somewhat more of a verification visit as that goes. For a comprehensive evaluation, you'll still have the assurance review with the argument and the linked evidence. You'll still have the federal compliance evaluation if this is a reaffirmation evaluation at year 10. The student's opinion survey has already been completed and sent to most of the teams at this point in time, not all of them. And we always have additional components that are part of the comprehensive evaluation. The multi-campus review is being put on an extended status at this point in time. We'll get more directions about that in the future, and that will probably be linked more directly to the visit to the campus time. Embedded change and embedded monitoring will still be part of this evaluation. Jeff, why don't you take on the conversation about the pre-work for the team?
Sure, thank you, Karen. Typically, when we talk about a comprehensive visit or a focused visit, in these cases, we talk about there being work done in advance of the visit. We talk about work being done at the same time while you're on campus evaluating the institution. And then we talk about post-visit work. So for the next few slides, we have two pairs for pre-work, the time that would be typically considered the work of the visit, and then post-visit work. Because what we'd like to emphasize is that there is a great deal of the conventional work of conducting a review that is still constant. And this is a good example. There is business as usual in the pre-work where a team is given previous reports and evidence to consider, for example, that they use as the foundation or basis to conduct their review. All of these typically take place during or with the assistance of the assurance system, and that will remain constant for comprehensive evaluations, just as it would take place during an on-site visit. The team chair has an important role in this pre-work, typically assigning tasks to the team, but also conducting important collaboration and setup of an agenda with the institution's accreditation liaison officer, and that too will continue. And similarly, just as with any conventional report that we've conventional review that we've had to date, the team chair communicates with the staff liaison, and again affirms the context and the conditions of what is about to take place. But there are some differences. So the next slide addresses some of these potential differences. You typically won't find any students on campus, thus the virtual reviews. So one wouldn't expect there to be any student interaction. The institutional staff also may be working remotely, or certainly will be working remotely. And so as a kind of condition of thinking about conducting a review, work with the information that the institution has provided, because it may be very difficult to have them assemble additional evidence or extensive evidence. Go with what they have provided, not what would be nice to know. Again, as Karen and Jamie reiterated, there will be no multi-campus evaluations for comprehensive reviews. Those will take place at a later date. But an additional element of pre-work, when you are working with your teams, make note of the unusual institutional context of this particular virtual review. Make note of the particular conditions under which this campus is being evaluated, whether it's a focus visit or a comp. Could I have the next? So there's a continuity of business as usual with respect to the actual work of the review or evaluation itself. The agenda that the team chair made with the ALO should be executed during the typical time. And by typical time, we're thinking still for a comp of a day and a half. And that's the time you would typically have on campus, but that time is the amount of time that in aggregate you should devote to this important work for the Commission. And at the end of this presentation, there is an example, or rather attached to this presentation, there is an example of one such agenda that a team has used. So just as typical in any review of the criteria, teams will identify areas of concern as normal, and if those areas of concern should yield some back and forth or give and take with the institution, the team chair should set that up during this course of this 1.5-day visit. The team should reach consensus as is usual, collaborate as a team, and execute writing in the assurance system as usual. But then there will be some potential differences that might emerge. Teams, for example, should not expect that every member of an institutional group will be available. Some of them might be working remotely and not have access to normal business operations. Some of them might not be well. Teams can also fall back on the conference line and again, be as flexible as is possible and as is reasonable, especially knowing that you, in many cases, will be working across time zones. And this can create some conflict, but again, the team chair, one of the first things the team chair should do is get a sense of all the different individuals who will be on different time zones so that these things can be coordinated easily. Teams should, consistent with this changed institutional context, keep a record of all the names and job titles of those who are at each session. This is really important so that, again, the conditions under which this campus is being reviewed or evaluated is made clear in case the Commission needs to look back upon this period for any kind of its own reporting. And then this is very important as well because you'll be using technology that for many of you will be unfamiliar. There must be no virtual recording of any element here. It's important for confidentiality, and it's important for the work of the Commission. So we've covered the pre-work, we've covered the evaluation work. Karen, why don't you bring us home with the post-review work? Karen, are you still there? You'll have to get off mute.
Thank you, Jeff. So for those of you that have participated in reviews before, you actually are going to follow your standard way of processing a team report. For those of you that are new reviewers, new not only to your first evaluation, but now your first virtual too, congratulations. The teams will complete their report. They'll work on developing the findings and evaluating the institution's evidence against the criteria. And the team chairs will continue to follow deadlines that have been set early on in this process. And the teams will adhere to a regular schedule for the submission of draft and final reports, and institutions will have the opportunity for errors of correction. We're not changing any parts of the processes in the front end or the back end. It's really just the point of that visit that's really the most critical change to this type of review. Let's move forward, Jamie. Now, I just want to give you a little bit of guidance and remind you that folks are working remotely. That means they may have limited capacity to obtain additional documents in the way that they typically would have during a visit. There may be some conversations that come up that you ask for something additional. Remind them to post those in the addendum section of the assurance system, but it may take a little bit more time as they can't just turn and walk down the hall to somebody to get that. May need to reach out to some of their colleagues in different ways. Some of the systems may be a little bit more intricate working from a remote environment. We do recognize that we have many new peer reviewers on these teams, and we ask that those of you that are experienced reviewers step in and help assist with those new reviewers along with the team chair, recognizing that the team chair is trying to work to build an evaluation in a virtual format, so that's going to take a little bit more time and effort for that team chair as they get ready. And as Jeff mentioned, this is a unique situation that context should be noted in the institutional context section of the report about what's going on and how this visit was conducted. And if you've got any feedback, please don't hesitate to reach out to the HLC staff liaison that's linked to this review, or directly to the group team leading the Peer Corps. Post-campus review, the visits will occur probably, we're anticipating or hoping now for the fall semester of 2020. The visits will be a day and a half in length, and we'll use the focused visit format. What are some of the key issues that the team at the time of this evaluation called out and identified as needing more attention, more information. And members will include the team chair and one member of the team. And you're there to really verify that what you understood at the time of the evaluation this spring was the reality on the ground. And if there are no new decisions that come out of that focus visit, additional action by a decision-making body, typically our Institutional Actions Council, IAC, will not be necessary. Jamie, you want to talk a bit about the travel expenses?
Sure, absolutely. We've got a lot of questions, not surprisingly, about travel expenses. Obviously, the Higher Learning Commission will reimburse any travel expenses you've incurred up to this point, and we ask that you cancel all of your travel as soon as possible. After you've done that, submit the receipts on a travel reimbursement form through the usual means at finance@hlcommission.org. And with that TURF, we're asking you to submit a memo explaining the expenses. Was it a cancellation fee, a refund of a credit on airline? Was it a hotel deposit? Along with the name of the institution. And if you can only receive credit for airfare, please indicate that along with the amount in your memo. You'll receive reimbursement, but then you'll be expected to use that credit for your next HLC assignment. Reviewers should not purchase software or incur technology expenses, please, for executing these virtual reviews. We're confident that the reviews can be done with using the intercall line alone if necessary, and that most campuses will have some kind of technology that can be used to facilitate these reviews. I also want to note that if you're the team chair, you might want to put in your memo or send a note to finance when you are submitting your own TURF related to the amount of work that your team members did. And what I mean by that is just verify for us that the other members of your team did the work. We're getting some questions from our finance team about how do I know if these people did the work. So if you're the team chair, just indicate that those team members did the work, and then we can get everybody paid. A little bit of a reminder with the resources that are available to you as team members on our website. Under the team peer review tab, we have all those usual resources that are there that you can use. And we also are keeping a section of our site for COVID-19 updates. So take a look at those things on a regular basis. This link here below is to a Pathways Refresher webinar that was taped on March 3rd. And it's an entertaining hour with Jeff and Karen bantering back and forth about the pathways. But particularly if you're a new reviewer and we're not able on March 3rd to attend that session, please do have a look at that because it'll walk you through all of the training and the pathways that we took you through last fall, and you'll get a refresher on all that material. If you're having trouble with the system, the insurance system, don't hesitate to reach out to Kathy Bijak. She can help get you redirected or get a password working again. And for conference line support through the intercall system, call Angela Sales in our office or email Angela Sales, and she'll also get back to you. She's also the one with whom you can inquire about additional lines. But as I mentioned, we do not have a lot of additional phone lines. So we'll do the best we can to share those out. If you have questions about the evaluation, please make contact with the staff liaison for that evaluation. They are the best source of information for what is going on currently with that institution, and they are the ones doing the day-to-day coordination and trying to help that campus through this crisis period, and also trying to facilitate some conversation between the teams and the institution when that's possible. And then if you need some scheduling support or team support, please don't hesitate to reach out to my team, Babatunde Kristen or Mary Claire. If you can remember who set that assignment for you, that's the best person to start with. If you can't, then you can always reach out to any of them and they'll redirect your email in the right way. Now I'm going to turn this over to Mike Westerfield and Pam and Monaco, who were out doing visits, Pam as the ALO and Mike as the team chair. So Mike, why don't you start, and then Pam, you can follow Mike.
Okay, I want to say to those that are going out on the visit that we were notified the Thursday before the visit that it was going to be moved to virtual, and I think Karen and Jeff made a very important point that should help alleviate any nervousness about the Monday and Tuesday morning virtual, and that is that only the visit itself really went virtual. Everything else was the same as a normal visit, pre-visit and even post-visit. And I think that's really important. The agenda, which is, there is a sample agenda attached to the handouts. And in that agenda, you will see that the team did try to simulate as much as possible an on-ground visit. So Sunday evening, we couldn't be together, obviously, as a team, so we used the HLC conference line, and we visited Sunday evening just as we would if we were at a hotel. You will notice on the agenda that we highlight the Central Standard Time because you've got team members who are in different time zones, plus the institutions in a different time zone, and that can get confusing if you're not very specific in each of the instances. We started Monday morning with our general and usual opening session. We probably did more combining in that than we normally would do because we had all the key executive officers. So we asked our questions there that we might have asked in a separate meeting with each of those. And we always allowed for about 10 to 15 minutes between sessions. We didn't have everyone get out of the Zoom call. We used the Zoom from the institution. We just left and did what we needed to do, and then we came back to the meeting. And I will say that worked very, very well. We scheduled all the areas of focus, one right after the other, with the little breaks in between. We had 3 areas of focus. That gave people a chance to change the personnel that were in the room and also gave everyone a little break. We took a lunch break just like we generally do. The team had 30 to 45 minutes and as did the campus. That afternoon we finished the third area of focus, and then we did all of the open forums, the 3 open forums that are generally scheduled. We just did them one right after the other. That helped the campus. It was in a large room. Once you got used to the Zoom, you can't see people quite like you do on a face-to-face visit, but we worked out ways they could let it be known they wanted to speak or whatever. So the first day really went from about 8:30 in the morning to 5 Central. On Tuesday, the board wanted to meet over lunch. They weren't comfortable with Zoom, and we were meeting at a board conference room that was actually in another city. So the board members joined in on that conference line. We joined their conference line, and it worked very well. I had a brief closing session after that board meeting. I called the campus through Zoom again and talked with the same people at the opening session. Then the team did use the HLC conference line, and we went into our post-visit session discussion about the core components, what people have found. I always have my team members do a lot of pre-writing of evidence statements so that they have that done before they come to campus, and it's based on the assurance argument. Then they can verify or follow up when we're on campus. We talked through all those. We talked about the ratings for each of those. And then once Wednesday hit, I gave them my cell phone, or which they always had, but I said, call me on my cell phone, email me. If we need another conference call in the morning, we can. But other than that, they had their assignments, they had their dates of when I wanted all the writing completed, and most of the writing was completed by Tuesday evening, I'm sure. But they now have a chance to edit and do. So it really didn't change a lot except in that virtual, and it went very well. So if you're nervous about that, just know I think it will go very well for you.
Pam?
Okay. Well, like with Michael, we received notification on Thursday that our campus visit was going to go virtual. So there was a moment of panic on my part. I'm the ALO for the school, and worked very closely with Linnea. Wilbur Wright College is finishing out AQUIP, and then immediately got in touch with our team leader. And I will say that, like Michael said, this went very well. And I think what was so important is right from the beginning is that there was good spirit and collaboration, and we all just knew that this was an extraordinary time and we were going to be able to do this fine. Some tips that I would give, and these are both for people who are going to be going on visits, but those of you who are accreditation officers on your campus to think about if this is coming towards you. First, make sure you decide on that technology and practice beforehand. On Saturday, I spent some time with the team leader who had never used, we use Zoom, and we worked out all of the bugs. And she felt confident with it, and I did. On Monday, we had arranged time for the entire team to spend together before we had any of our groups come in. And I had scheduled to have an IT person accessible, and he was stationed to be there for the entire visit. After the first hour, we really didn't need him, but it just made everybody feel quite comfortable about this. Picking up on one of the things that Michael said that we didn't do, which I would say is schedule lunch breaks for the team, because we had working lunches, but the team, I don't think, had thought through about having lunch themselves, so they got to watch our board munch down together and so forth. We were not in a shelter-in-place mode at that time. We didn't have faculty or staff for the most part on campus, but we did have some people. And so we did have one location, and all the meetings happened physically from that one location, and I think that made it much easier. In terms of setting up the sessions, and I think this will be important for those of you who are ALOs, that make sure that each of the session is set up as a separate Zoom session. And that way you can keep from having people arrive early, and if you're on Zoom, you hear a doorbell ring. So you just want to make sure that that is separate. And I would also suggest that anyone who is setting up a Zoom or other meeting, make sure that the invitations to those particular sessions are forwarded to the visiting team, and that way their contact information isn't spread across the campus. I would also, in terms of using Zoom, encourage the visiting team to use the breakout rooms, that if they have, like Michael was saying, the 15-minute break, that they can just go into a breakout room on their own if they wanted to have a quick conversation. Other things, if there are a large number of participants who join virtually, I would recommend using the chat feature for questions, but then also for the hand-raising feature so that you can cut down on 10 people who all of a sudden get very eager and all want to answer the same question at the same time. And then almost to the end of my suggestions, I would say, too, that in our particular case, our campus, like I think all campuses, we had worked so hard on this visit and had spent a long time getting people excited and prepared. And perhaps because of that, we had no trouble getting good participation. For example, with our faculty session, typically no matter what time we would schedule it, we'd have so many faculty saying that they couldn't join. Because this was virtual, we had over 35 who logged in, and this was when they're all trying to convert all of our classes to online. So I just think that is a real sense of how in this time of crisis people are coming together. We also were able to get students to join in. And then I know that Jeffrey had said, please don't ask for a lot of extra documents. We were asked for a lot of extra documents, so we've been adding them, and I was just going to give the caution that be prepared because, for example, the faculty files ended up taking us an enormous amount of time because of redacting all the information that were on transcripts and so forth. So, but I would echo what Michael said. It was a really good experience. I think we as a campus came together and felt quite good about it, and our visiting team was marvelous, and I couldn't say more about it, and I wouldn't have predicted that I would say all this positive last Thursday.
So we did load a sample agenda that featured some of this interactive component. This was a very prominent feature in the advice that we got from the Department of Education, that there must be an interactive component that would facilitate conversation between the team and the institution. So we have loaded one of these that was modified from Michael's visit this last week into the session, so you can take a look at that. At this time, I want to open it up for questions. And the format is that you look for that question box that opened up for you, and you want to type your question into the dialogue area. I'm going to read the question, and then somebody on the line will answer that question. So the first one is, in the past, a team member would review the personnel credentials. Can you talk about HLC's position on this in a virtual environment?
Well, I can go ahead, just what I was saying at the end, that the team submitted to us a list of the number of credentials that they wanted to look at, whether they were online faculty, face-to-face, early college, and so forth. And then we chose all of those. We scanned the documents after we had redacted information such as social security numbers, which are still on some people's transcripts. And then once we had done all that and scanned them, we put them into a PDF. We put bookmarks so that each one was identified in terms of online faculty, early college, what they taught. You know, not as perfect, but I think it will work for this.
Yeah, and I certainly can't speak for what HLC's perspective is on that, but as a team, when we are looking at faculty qualifications that are based and embedded in the core components, we used the assurance argument and the links that they had in there and felt they were sufficient. Now, our visit was at a very small institution, so there weren't a lot of faculty, but we just followed the general practice we would follow anytime when we're on a visit.
This is Jeff. I just want to endorse what Pam and Mike have just said. Typically, again, unless there are glaring problems that are carried over from earlier monitoring reports and the like, typically the commission only asks for a sample. And what Pam just articulated in terms of the latitude that she and her colleagues had on campus to make the selection, to verify that this was representative, and then to scrub personal information and then render it all in a package, a PDF file, that is all exemplary practice as far as I'm concerned.
Thanks, Jeff and Pam and Mike. Here's another question. Should we have the open criteria sessions, even if all of the staff are working remotely?
Well, this is Pamela again. I would say absolutely. We were able to, we had sent the Zoom link to, I sent it to managers and asked the managers to send it to staff. I stayed in the Zoom meeting long enough to see the people to make sure that nobody who was not staff had crept in. And then I left it in the good hands of the team. And we had a very large number of staff who I will just say that felt so good that they had the opportunity to participate.
And I would agree with Pamela. I don't know how one could not have these criteria meetings. I think they're important to the institution. It's important for them to have an opportunity to talk about it. It was important for our team because no matter how well someone writes an assurance argument, a team doesn't always understand fully what they're intending in their argument. So it was a very great experience to have that opportunity to visit. Even in a Zoom situation, it worked.
And this is Jeff one more time. I just want to, again, say that these are exemplary practices. And they're particularly important given what Jamie articulated earlier about the Department of Education's guidance, that there must be some give and take. There must be some opportunity to raise questions, to hear responses, and then to follow up in real time. And in this way, by what Mike and Pam have just said, you will be able to document that this in fact took place.
Here's a question for those in the field this week, I think. In meeting with faculty and staff, we typically ask that no one in administration be in attendance so that attendees feel comfortable speaking. Was that difficult to manage in the virtual setting?
This is Pamela again. I will say no, it wasn't. I had certainly worked with the team chair, and she was very good at going around the room and asking people what their titles were. We had talked beforehand about her having the authority, of course, to say, it would seem that because you're a associate dean, you shouldn't be in the staff meeting or something like that. But I had also worked very diligently reminding people what the different meetings were for and the appropriate people, and that everybody would have an well, not everybody, but different groups would have an opportunity to be heard and represented. And I don't think we had any problems that way.
I would agree. We had no problems with that. I had worked with the president and the ALO before the visit, and they knew exactly who should be in what meetings. We told them who should be in the areas of focus, those area of focus meetings. So it worked very well. No one balked at that. We had our trustee meeting without the president, so it was very easy.
So I'm going to open it up again for questions. I don't see any in the box at the moment. So are there other questions? We still have about 15 minutes left on the call. Here's one coming in now. Can we count on the ALO to prepare a list of participants' titles and then submit those to the chair?
I will just speak for myself, but it was a clear responsibility that I understood, and after each meeting, I had typed up the titles by meeting and have forwarded it to the chair. So yes, I think that is a perfectly reasonable expectation, and ALO should know to do that.
Yes, and I, at least in my experience, ALO was happy to do that for us.
What if the institution resides in a city or a county or a state that's under a shelter-in-place mandate? It seems this could impact the number of individuals to participate in specific meetings.
This is Pamela again. I would say just the opposite. I'm based in Chicago. We apparently are within the next hour going to hear that. I think everybody who's been working remotely is so eager to have the opportunity to interface through some sort of technology with others, and again, tell the story. People are excited. They've been looking forward to this event, and they want to share the story of their school.
I would agree. I did not sense any numbers that were down because we were on some type of virtual connection. In fact, as you say, in some ways, I think people were more open to talk and to share the story of their institution. People have worked very hard on their arguments, and they've worked very hard to get ready for a visit. So I think it worked very well.
If the college is in a very rural area and technology is not reliable, should reviewers just rely on the conference line?
Well, you certainly could do that. I mean, where I was virtually. They were in a very rural area, and I would say that we did not have any problems with the technology. Like Pamela, they did have an IT person there with us all the time. I had one team member that, because of the nature of what was happening on his campus and him having to run from here to there, he was occasionally kicked out of a call, and then he'd have to come back in. But if that were to become an issue, then yes, use the HLC conference line. We could have functioned that way. We functioned that way with the board, although it wasn't the HLC conference line. It was one of their conference lines, and it worked well. We could have done it without the Zoom if necessary.
And I'll remind folks that we allow the bare minimum of the virtual evaluation to be through the conference line. Anything above and beyond that is additional support.
Right, Karen. And the department really only specifies that there be an interactive component. They don't specify that it has to be a visual component or a two-way video or anything like that. They said conference calls were just fine, as long as there was that back and forth of that give and take that Jeff mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Should focus visit teams expect to do an in-person follow-up visit to campus in the field, or are only the comprehensive visit teams doing a follow-up visit? This is Karen and Jeff.
I believe that all of these now virtual reports must have some verification, if you will. I think the term that we're using right now is an on-site follow-up visit. And right now, our legal and regulatory affairs team is working to finalize several letter templates, really, that we will be sending as a follow-up to this meeting and to other communication with the membership. So we're resolving that right now.
So the open pathway, standard pathway, and ACLIP comprehensive or CQRs will be virtual evaluation with an on-site follow-up visit. Institutions that are in candidacy, for a candidacy, initial candidacy, biennial evaluation, initial accreditation, will extend those visits, and I don't think probably anybody's on the phone here today for those. Notice visits, probation visits, and show cause visits will also extend and identify a different time for those visits. Monitoring visits, monitoring focus visits, we're actually going to review each and every one of the focus visits and see if we can potentially convert it to a monitoring report or extend the date, or the baseline would be to have that virtual visit and on-site visit. The campus evaluations, multi-location visits, additional confirmation, location confirmation visits, we're going to put those on hold because we need to have students present specifically for those reviews. And the change visits, we're going to make adaptations, and you can be in contact with the change team if you've been assigned to a change visit, and find out what determination's been made for those.
If you have any questions about a focus visit you've been assigned to, The best place to start is with the staff liaison, and they can tell you what's happening with that particular visit.
I just ask that you give the liaisons a couple days because we are just making decisions over the next day or two. So give us till midweek next week before you contact the liaison about the focused visit because they may not have had the chance to review the file and make a determination yet.
Thanks, Karen. Will we have the option to delay a visit by a couple of weeks if approved by the college, since many of us on our team, we're in the process of trying to work through unprecedented issues on our own campus? How would we go about doing that? I can take this one. If you believe that you or several members of your team just simply cannot do the virtual review on the date that it's scheduled because of things that are going on your campus, again, the best place to start would be with the staff liaison. They can foster that conversation with the ALO at the institution and see if there's a mechanism for postponing that virtual review to later in the spring term. As much as possible, we'd like to keep the teams together, and we'd like to keep these virtual reviews running during the spring semester so that we don't upset the current accreditation and reaffirmation cycle for those institutions. There are other options and mechanisms put in place in that federal document, but the more that we can stay with our timeline, the better off our business continuity is during this period as an accreditor. Someone asked if there would be a copy of this put on the YouTube page, and the answer is yes. So as soon as we are done here today on this webinar, and this one technically, from a technological perspective, went more smoothly than the first one we did this morning. So we will turn this one into a video and then make it into a YouTube, and we'll make that available and send it all out. Are there other questions in the field among the participants right now? Well, hearing none, I will leave it to the speakers to say any last words they have, as I remind people that everyone here at the Commission is here to support you, your institution, and all of our peer reviewers during this time. I will take us back to a couple of these slides where there's some information about that Pathways refresher, as well as a reminder about the information that's available on our website and a couple of system support folks that you can call. Any other final words from any of our panelists? Well, hearing none. Go ahead. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yes, I was just going to offer everyone on the call the thanks and appreciation from everyone at the Commission for your flexibility and your understanding during this time. We really couldn't do this work without you.
Thanks, Jeff. I think everyone on the call feels the same. All of our panelists are very grateful to this group, again, for your flexibility and willingness. And as Pam said, just everyone pitching together to get all this work done during this really difficult time for everyone. So again, my thanks, and you know how to reach us if you have any additional questions. If you couldn't download the materials that were in loaded into the session itself today, you can reach out to Denise Clark, D.Clark at HL.
I emailed them already.
Oh, she already emailed.
I emailed everyone before the meeting, so everyone should, if you didn't receive it, send an email to me and let me know you didn't receive it.
Beautiful. She's way ahead of me as usual. So anyway, our thanks for logging in today, and I wish you all a very good weekend and all good safety and good health. Goodbye now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.